Hey friends, and welcome back to our book club, Love and Responsibility, as we delve in to the teachings of Pope St. John Paul II using Dr. Edward Sri's book, Men, Women, and the Mystery of Love. I hope that your discussions last week were very fruitful. Human dignity, utilitarianism, the sexual urge, romantic relationships. I hope that you had some time to just reflect individually, to integrate these things into your life so that your relationships can become more Christ-centered, more fruitful, and life-giving. So here we are again, week 3, guys. I think perhaps, just maybe, you're starting to feel the pangs of commitment. You signed up for this with lots of energy, lots of excitement. Here we are getting into it, and things are getting busier, and you've got scheduling, and oh, do I really have time? Guys, it's going to require sacrifice. Don't throw in the towel. Be not afraid. It's going to be so worth it and very fruitful for you in your relationship. So stay strong, hang in there. This week we're talking about chapter 3, which focuses again on the sexual urge. Last week we gave kind of an overview to the sexual urge, meaning John Paul II's breakdown of our sexual attractions to members of the opposite sex. So there's 2 dimensions to the one sexual urge. The first dimension is the bodily dimension. John Paul II will call this the sensual dimension of the sexual urge. So this is just, the attraction that we have to the body of the other. There's also the sentimental dimension of the sexual urge. This is our attraction to the masculinity or femininity of the other. Chapter 3 focuses exclusively on the sensual dimension of the sexual urge. So this is the kind of the focus of our summary today. So first and foremost, John Paul II points out that this sensual dimension of the sexual urge, this is the first urge, or first part of the urge that we experience, which makes total sense, right? We see someone and we experience an attraction to the body that we see. It doesn't mean that we even know this person, right? Whereas the sentimental attraction, the urge that we have, this develops with time, right? The masculinity, the femininity, the characteristics associated with that takes time. We got to get to know the person. We have a conversation or two. We build a relationship, and then that urge, that part of the urge is going to kind of to grow and to blossom. So he begins just by saying, this is the first dimension of the sexual urge that we experience. It's not bad, once again. Both dimensions, the sexual urge itself, this is placed in us by God, and it's a gift. It's ordered towards, whether we're talking the sensual or the sentimental, let's just keep it to the sensual right now. It's ordered towards personal communion, right? So it's the whole reason why this urge is here is to draw us into the other so that we can, connect with them on a deeper level, on the level of the person. Ultimately, that we can truly love this person. Right? So John Paul II, this is a good thing, that the attractions we experience to the body of another, this is not bad or sinful in and of itself. The question is really going to be, what do we do with this attraction? So a lot of people come, oh, Father, is it bad that I'm attracted to her? And what they mean is to have this bodily attraction. The answer is no. But what are we doing with that? And ultimately, it's a question of integration. We want to integrate the bodily attraction that we experience, the sensual dimension of the sexual urge, to the person. The grave danger for us, especially in the society in which we live, is that we never get to that level of integration. We just stay on the level of the body, and we just act and we respond to the bodily attractions that we experience in another person. And if we do that, we're going to be very easily led into utilitarian relationships based upon use. In this case, just gratifying my sexual pleasures and my sexual bodily urges, so to speak. So we have to be careful with that. Secondly, Dr. Sri, pulling from John Paul II, he leads us into a discussion on true beauty, right? So if we just stay on the level of the body, we're going to miss the person, and we never really connect on a deeper level in love with the person who is physically attractive. Also, we're never going to really encounter the true beauty of that other person, right? Beauty in the mind of John Paul II, really in truth, beauty in truth is contemplated, meaning beauty slows us down. Beauty causes us to reflect, in this case, on this other person within the context of God's grand creation, right? Beauty, as contemplated, leaves us with a sense of peace, leads us with a sense of real appreciation, goodness, right? But when we stay on the level of the body, we just respond. We might say, oh, it's just she's so beautiful. But really, it's an impoverished beauty. Because to stay on the level of the body, it's not going to lead us to contemplation. It's going to lead us to consumerism. It's going to lead us to, ooh, there's a beautiful body. I want to consume it for my own sexual pleasures and desires. And once I consume it, I move on to the other. So it ultimately leads us to a place of instability, a place of a desiring more, not being at peace and satisfaction, but kind of this, unrest and this impatience. We have one, we want another, we move on to the other, and the next, right? So it's not true appreciation for beauty when we just stay on the level of the body. This is how we could summarize it. Sensuality on its own fails to see the body as a beautiful masterpiece of God's creation, and it reduces the body to an object to be exploited to satisfy one's own sensuous cravings. Okay, so we want to avoid that. We want to definitely avoid that. Then he goes into a discussion about, what's the difference between Michelangelo and Playboy? And it's going to really get back into this, what we just discussed, right? At the end of the day, Playboy is about arousing our lusts so that we can enter into this consumeristic, relationship to another person. In this case, pornography, right? So it arouses our lust. We consume the body of the other. It keeps us on the level of sexual stimulation, and on the body, we view or we use, and then we move on to the other. It's not really about true beauty. It's not about contemplating anything within God's plan. It's just satisfying our lustful urges. It's important to make that distinction because a lot of times people would say, well, you go into, Christian art and sacred art and you see naked bodies. So what's the difference between looking at that, sculpture of a naked lady or man and watching something like pornography? Well, there's a big difference, and it has to do with the end or the goal of what's being done here. Pornography's end or goal is arousing our sexual lusts, right? And just reducing someone to their bodily form. Whereas, a beautiful work of art, even though it might be a naked body, it's meant to bring us to this place of contemplation, to slow us down, the goodness, the beauty in God's great plan. This is a human being in beauty, right? So they're very different. Another danger is that when we are just staying on the level of the body and responding to this dimension of the sexual urge, and we don't actually integrate it into personal communion, is that it's going to enslave us. And I think this we see most clearly in pornography, right? Many people are slaves to pornography. They stay on this level of the body. It's consumeristic and it's very addictive. It's enslaving. There's a great article. I encourage you to look it up. It's called The Science Behind Pornography by Dr. Kevin Majors. You can find it on the website called purityispossible.com. And it goes into this very, on the level of science, this reality that pornography is enslaving. It drives our dopamine receptors, right, which kind of like our pleasure receptors, right? So we watch porn, dopamine pours into our system, and we get in a surge of it. Well, as we do that, essentially, it kind of diminishing returns. Eventually, it's not enough. So that just pornography in and of itself isn't satisfying. So then we have to bring something else into the equation. What do we bring? Adrenaline. Adrenaline is triggered by shocking things or by fear or by, oh. And this is when we start getting into very dark and weird stuff regarding pornography. Not going to go into the details there. But the point of this kind of shocking pornographic stuff is to drive our adrenaline. So now we have dopamine and adrenaline, which is a very dangerous combination because it begins to rewire our brains. It's called neuroplasticity, so that we actually start to be attracted to some very dark and gross stuff that a normal person would just say, how could you honestly be attracted to that? That's repulsive. Well, it's because their brain's been rewired. Anyway, Guys, we don't want to go down that road. It's very enslaving. There is hope. God can heal, but it's a very difficult journey back, right? So we don't want to go down that road. But it all proves this point that when we stay on the level of the body, it's enslaving. It's not freeing. It's not liberating. Our God is a God of liberty, of freedom, true freedom, not of enslavement. So you can think about our culture and sadly how it just tries to reduce us and stay on this level of the body. Think of lyrics and songs. There's one in particular that's very popular right now. It's just awful, but it's all about the body and reducing one to the body. But think of TV shows, ads, like I said, pornography. It's everywhere. We need to be aware of it. We need to resist that temptation just to respond on the level of the body. We need to integrate, right? Towards personal communion. We need to integrate this good bodily attraction to a higher level of love, which has to do with friendship, virtue, commitment, right? Self-giving. Very important. Lastly, they point out, because some people will say, well, if I'm watching porn, I'm not hurting anybody, right? But this level of attraction on the level of the body, it can be sinful even just in the imagination or just in the mind. Because ultimately we're training ourselves to respond and to objectify another on the level of the body. So it is sinful. You are hurting people. You're hurting yourself principally, and you're training yourself to then see others and their value just on the level of the sensual of the body. So that's not good. It's ultimately sinful. I mean, Jesus said, he who looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery with her in his heart. So Christ actually sets a very high standard for the way in which we see other people. That's it for today. That's our summary of chapter 3, the level of the body. It needs to be integrated into higher levels of love. We're going to talk about those higher levels in chapter 4, which is coming up next week. Until then, we are united in prayer. God bless you, brothers and sisters. Stay strong. May your relationships be Christ-centered, very fruitful, and life